Sometimes I lose my way, I stumble and fall. I fail to see the open door and only see the wall. Sometimes I close my ears when open they should be, but then I stop and listen to that still small voice inside of me. Pete Hooley, Sharet Tzedek, Avovam, Odeya, Pete Hooley, Sharet Tzedek, Avovam, Odeya. May I see my life in the works of your hands and walk in love and freedom to the promised land. And when I lose my way, I pray that I may see that spark inside the darkness and the gates open for me. Pete Hooley, Sharet Tzedek, Avovam, Odeya, 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 Pete Hooley, Pete Hooley.
We turn on page 688. We light the candles. May it be your will, Eternal One, our God of our ancestors, that these candles light up the pathway to return on this holy Shabbat Shabbaton, a Sabbath of complete cessation. By their light, may your light be seen. As we light our candles for our Chag to begin this 25 hours of holy work. Page 688, we find the blessing.
Chord? No, A minor? Okay. No? Are we gonna, that's what you say. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel yom hazikaron.
We are at the service known as Kol Nidre. We call this service Kol Nidre because it contains the prayer, the liturgical piece of Kol Nidre, this such important piece to our days of atonement. Kol Nidre is the removal of the promise that whatever promises we're going to make over this year, we might fall short on some of those promises. So rather than take the risk that some of those promises might be a vow to something greater, the rabbis create Kol Nidre, a chance to say, we're not telling you to break all of your promises. But over the course of the year, when things happen, when life gets in the way, and it might happen, that our entire tradition still believes in you, still believes in your soul, in the intention behind your practice, and therefore missteps, tripping up, they're already forgiven. The rabbis are really worried about this prayer because they think that anti-Semites across the world will see it and think the Jews are praying that none of their promises matter. And so they go as far as to try to remove it from the liturgy. And this is the most powerful point. The Jews in the pews pushed back. They said, no, you don't get our Kol Nidre. You don't get the music, the melody, the intention that starts our day of Yom Kippur. We keep that. So the rabbis said, okay. And they found a way to keep it. And I am so glad, because it is truly a powerful example of an entire tradition caring about each of us as individuals. And so to show that, we will have 9 groups of people come up to hold Torah tonight. It's a little chaotic back here, bear with us. But we're gonna have different groups of people who care for this community, love this community, show their soul for this community, to come down and hold Torah during each of our chantings of Kol Nidre. Because this is about the individual and about each of us knowing that we might make a few mistakes, but if we're in community together, if we have these moments of safeguard, then we're all going to be okay. We turn to page 692. I ask Marilyn and Tom to come up to open the Ark. There's a lot of standing on this holiday of Yom Kippur. I want to preemptively remind you, it's okay when you need to sit. We stand because of the elevated importance of its blessings, but we sit at times because we need to take care of ourselves as well. As the Ark is open, I invite you to please rise. For our first, yes, thank you. For our first recitation of Kol Nidre, ask Rita and Joe Cohen, Dana, Rick, and Alana Enton, Lisa Seamus and Jess Ravitch to please come forward to hold the Torahs for our first round of Kol Nidre. I'm going to have follow on page 694.
Kol Nidre be'esarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei u'shavuot din darna udin levana udacharimna v'diasarna al shatana miyom kippurim ze ad yom kippurim haba Aleinu Litova Kol Hon Icharat Navechon Kol Hon Yehon Sharan Shavikin, Shavitin, V'teilin umvutalin, Lashererim, Valakayamim, Dindarna, La Nidre La Asare Ushavua Tana La Shavuot.
If I can have our next three families, Ivy and Peter Green, Jackie and David Israel, Beth and Stuart Senator, come down. We each find a family and have the Torah passed. I'm good. Who's all in? All vows and formulas of prohibition and declarations of taboo and promises of abstinence and names of God and pledges one assumes on penalty and oaths, whatever we have vowed and then forgot, whatever we have sworn but not upheld, whatever we declared taboo that went amiss, whatever prohibitions we assumed upon ourselves to no avail. In the last day of atonement to this day of atonement, may the day come upon us for the good. From all of them we now request release. Let their burden be dissolved and lifted off and canceled and made null and void, hearing no force and no reality. Those vows shall not be binding vows, those prohibitions not to be binding prohibitions, those oaths shall not be binding oaths. Our third set, holders of our sacred text, Debbie and Don Mink, Elise Carl and Terry Friedman, Sari and Matt Ross.
Kol nidre ve'esare ve'charame ve'koname ve'chinuye ve'kinusei Shavuot Din Darna Udeish Tevana Harimna Vedia Al naf shatana miyom kippurim ze ad yom kippurim haba טובה כהן יחרד נא וכהן כל הון יהון שרן שביתין בתהילין ומבוטלים לשררים ולקיימים דין דרנה לנדרי ואסרה נא לאסרה ושבוע תנה לשבוע.
You may be seated.
While you're sitting, I'd like to just introduce now to you these remarkable musicians with us. This is our new friend, Jerome Kessler, Jerry Kessler, who's joining us this year, and of course our music director, who is my right and left hand and perhaps a foot, Michael Asher, who is just the king. You are the king. And I appreciate all of your work. We appreciate it. It's a moment, isn't it? It's a moment.
Take a deep breath. Julie says it's a moment. That is an understatement. It is supposed to be profound. And I felt it. I know many of you did too, so now take the moment and let it sink in. When we feel something that transformative, that protective, that loving, we commemorate it with our Shechechianu. We say a blessing of knowing that what we felt is special. So on page 696.
Baruch
Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman chazeh. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who not only gives us the ability to soak in the profoundness of a moment, but allows us to do something with that transformative, effective feeling that we got, allows us to go out into this world taking that feeling and allows it to ripple out to all that we will accomplish for the world. And together we say, Amen. I know it was not a long time to sit, but we turn on page 708 to the Baruch Hu. So I'm going to have to ask you once again to rise.
I could feel you stalling.
This time, I know, I thought I gave you a little extra moment of rest, but we join together, page 708, this call to prayer, this call to unify our voices.
Barechu et Adonai Hamevorach
may be seated and turn to page 712.
This is a beautiful piece by Debbie Friedman of blessed memory. Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam. Beit Yisrael, sing with me. Amcha ahavta. Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadita. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu uvkumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha uv'mitzvotecha leolam voed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla negei yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael ohev amo Yisrael.
Close your eyes. You've already accomplished profound amount liturgically. Take a deep breath. We have a full day of transformation and prayer. Take another deep breath. As we turn on page 714, the words of the Shema. I want us to recognize the importance of listening as well. We have said all the things we have to say, but there's a lot of really brilliant people around us saying them too. So let's remember this holy reminder of our Shema, to really take that in and listen as well. Let's take one more deep breath. And we join together.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Voed. We continue together. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Page 728. We have the words of Mi Chamocha. Who is like you, God who is as wondrous, God who is as awesome and declares and deserves the praise, God. In moments of discomfort, in moments of return, we seek that comfort of God. And sometimes we get that comfort by asking, who is like you? Recontextualizing, giving us that new perspective, that new moment, that new view. Page 728.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך חוטותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה, זה לי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Amen. We are turning now to page 730. And this is a piece that we're going to invite our friend Sherry Citrickfield to come on up here, a wonderful singer, a product of this place, and a great singer, and someone who was ready at a moment's notice in such a way I can't even describe it. Ready at a moment's notice. Are you going to have a mic? I don't know. Yes, take this one. Okay. So Sherry and I are going to sing this. This is a Hashkivenu. This is a piece by cantor Linda Hirschhorn. It's just a beautiful. It's a once a year thing to be able to sing with Sherry, and we've missed it for a couple of years. So this is we spread over ourselves a shelter of peace. This is what we want. We don't want it just, I want to shelter you. You want to shelter me, right? So we sing together. Jerry and say it again. Oh, I'm going to play guitar. Yes. Yes, right. I will. Okay. You're not going to really hear the guitar. It's going to be a little bit. I don't hear it. Hashkivenu leshalom v'hamidenu lechaim ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha sukat shlomecha Ushmor tzeiteinu uvaweinu lechaim u'lishalom me'ata ve'ad olam ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha sukat shlomecha. Give us this night time to lie in peace. May we rise to new life each day, and let there be shelter for the brokenhearted, a shelter of love for all. In life and peace from now and ever on, and let there be shelter for the brokenhearted, a shelter of love for all. In life and peace from now and ever on, and let there be shelter for the brokenhearted, a shelter a shelter of love for all.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yasher koach. Beautiful. Page 782. Ya'aleh. Ya'aleh is the beginning now of our set of blessings to scaffold this notion of forgiveness from our transgressions, from our sins. I invite you, if you don't know the words, to simply close your eyes again. Let the voice of Julie and the beautiful cello together take you into this space of real, effective, transformative change.
Ya'aleh Yisheinu me'erev ve'avot horeinu miboker ve'yira'eh יעלה זיכרוננו מערב ויבוא ביהודנו מבוקר ויראה הדרתנו עד מערב ויבוא גילנו מבוקר יעלה אין כתנו מערב ויבוא אליך
(812), the words of Adonai, Adonai, reflecting on the multifaceted breadth and depth of emotion and persona and love of the divine.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed Lalafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata'a As we sing together, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed Lalafim, Osei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata'a V'Nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed Lalafim, Nosei Avon הפשע וחטאה ונקה.
We rise on page 814. Again, we will be standing for the next 4 blessings. Shema Kolenu. Earlier, we had an opportunity to recognize the power of Shema, the idea of listening, of hearing. Now is a moment in which we ask that God be listening. Sochiro did really well, by the way. He's here for like a long time.
I would say, yeah.
Shema Kolenu, hear our voice, because the words that we're about to utter from now to Ashamnu, to Achet She'atanu Lefanecha, all of these blessings are about us being most vulnerable and most honest with the divine. So we begin with Shema Kolenu. We begin by asking that God hear our voice. Hear the integrity and the honesty behind us acknowledging, admitting our wrongdoings, our transgressions, our sins. We begin on page 814 with these words of Shema Kolenu.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, rachem aleinu. Sing with me. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, rachem aleinu, v'kabel berachamim uvratzon et tefilatenu, tefilatenu, hashkivenu, Adonai elecha, venashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem, Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, rachem aleinu, Shema Kolenu. You know this by now, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, rachem aleinu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu.
Page 820, we continue with our communal confession of Ashamnu Bagadnu.
Lai la lai 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 la la lai 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 la la lai 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 Ashamnu Bagadnu Gazalnu Dibarnu Dofi ay 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 ay. La 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 la, he'evinu Asnu Tafalnu Shaker Laila 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 couldn't hurt la 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 Yatsnu Ra Kizavnu Latsnu Maradnu Niatnu Sararnu Avinu Pa'ashanu Tsararnu Kishinu Oref Laila 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 Rashanu Shichatnu Tiavnu Tainu Titanu.
Page 828. We continue with Al Chet Sha'atanu Lefanecha.
Ve'al kulam Elohai selichot selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu ve'al kulam Elohai selichot selach lanu mechalanu selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu.
Turn on page 460. Now that we have been so vulnerable to acknowledge our transgressions, our sins, we turn to the comfort of relationship. We sing the words of Avinu Malkeinu, the recognition that we have a true relationship, a relationship we can trust, a relationship we can have faith in with the divine, especially after such a vulnerable space. On page 460, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masi. Aseim anu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseim anu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshiyeh. Aseim anu, Aseim anu. Let's hear your harmony. Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseim anu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshiyenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masi.
You may be seated. There is a trend in American internet discourse around the notion of self-care. Young people increasingly believe that the road to self-care means cutting toxic people from your life. Rather than reflect on our own experience, the go-to wisdom of the day is to remove the external factors rather than deal with the realities of our internal experience. Place a blame on the individual outside source over the introspective work. The last 3 years, we have experienced and lived through a time of quick judgment, public dismissal of people's reputations, and a haphazard cutting out of individuals from life without true, careful exploration. Be honest, how many people here felt a tinge of joy when they read about someone falling from fame? A little spark of excitement when they heard the bad-mouthing and found out to be true. That enjoyment only lasted minutes, but it was intoxifying. And we describe people in these oversimplified terms: toxic, negative, all these one-word ways of reducing a person down to why you'll remove them. Between social media and the overall access to the internet and the ease of connections, we honestly live more of our lives in silos and disconnection. We as individuals get reduced to just one of these attributes, based solely on the specific context of a specific interaction at times. And that reductionary view is really scary. Now, a lot of people assume that to truly practice self-care, you have to remove those toxic factors from our lives, that we need to adjust what we consume and are exposed to rather than adjust our outlook and perspective. I understand it from what they're reading. The beauty of a tweet is its simplicity. You can hear a clear bang at the end of each sentence, but that just doesn't correspond to the messiness of life. What mistakes can we make and still ask for forgiveness? What do we owe one another? What do we owe ourselves? All questions that remain completely unanswered when we consume information in highly curated experiences. In regard to toxicity, it has truly gone wild. A quick internet search will give you 477 million results in 0.5 seconds. Here are some of the headlines. 7 types of toxic people and how to spot them. 15 factors that create a toxic workplace. Toxic people, 12 things they do and how to deal with them. This type of advice is not only uncontextualized, it's dismissively dangerous, and it's anti-Jewish. You see, the advice comes from a me-first perspective that many of us see as a direct result of elevating self-care as a priority. Do not misunderstand me. This is not a diatribe against self-care. That's another sermon for another year. This is about the fact that our tradition does not view the world in a binary like self-care and toxic people. We view the world through community. I want to be clear, there are people in some of our lives that truly do need to be removed for emotional, mental, or physical well-being of ourselves. And my guess is that if one of you has someone in your life that you've had to make that decision, you spent a lot of time reflecting on that decision. And it was likely incredibly painful to go through with that decision. What I'm addressing tonight is not that. I'm talking about the people that we don't know nearly as well, the people that we know far more casually, or the people we don't know at all. Community at its core is a process of trust. Yes, we must take care of ourselves, but we must be our best selves so that we can care for the rest of community. The core tenet of community is the notion that we create this web-like strength in all caring for one another. It's a system of reliance and stability. It's almost as if all of us lean in, and the core, the center, the strength is that we've all leaned in together. And this is why Torah is essentially forbidden to be studied alone. We are commanded to study in Hevruta, to study with others. We must hear the perspectives of other people. It protects us from going into these internalized spirals and getting trapped in our own secluded perspective. There's a famous story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who flees the Romans and hides in a cave with his son. For 12 years, the two of them hide in a cave doing nothing but studying the laws of Torah, until they are truly the two most learned individuals of our sacred text. And after 12 years, they left the cave. They passed a field where they saw a Jewish farmer toiling the land, a literal mitzvah in the Torah. And they said, imagine people giving up the sacred study of Torah for worldly matters. And as they said this, the field burst into flames. And they hear the voice of God say, have you come out of your cave to destroy my world? Go back. Get out of here. The two had convinced themselves that their experience, their obsessive study of Torah, was the only right way. Yet they had missed the intention of Torah. It is amazing to have studied Torah, but even something as elevated and holy as our sacred text can be dangerous when it's consumed in a complete vacuum. We all live in silos of our own creation. We come out of those silos and we look at the world the way Shimon Bar Yochai looked at the world. We see how others operate, how they prioritize. We agree or disagree with their choices, and we see all of their actions through a lens of scorched earth. Beyond the fact that this is wildly irresponsible, we inflate a false sense of justice within our own judgments. And in Bereshit Rabbah, there's a beautiful phrase, does not the judge of all the earth do justice? The phrase, if you want a world, you cannot have strict justice. And if you want strict justice, you cannot have a world. Choose one. And if you can't give up just a little, then this world can't exist. When we deal with toxic people, we often go straight to justice. I'm cutting those people out. I am blocking them. I'm not engaging with them anymore. But cutting people out because they don't agree with your lens of the world is lazy. Cutting them off for perceived toxicity is lazy. And we're commanded today to not dismiss without cause. When we remove someone from society, it quite literally tears the fabric of our community. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to feel that is necessary, we need to have done extreme due diligence. There is a concept called third place. Third place is where people hang out. It's where discourse once dwelled. And with a dying third place, our culture is all the harder. This phrase was coined by Ray Oldenburg, and he described them as an anchor of community. The bowling alley, the coffee shop, parks, barbershops, diners, the basis for the show Cheers all together. In fact, every 90s sitcom has a third place. You can see every one of them flashing in front of your eyes, the orange couch. Okay. Here, you would have heard views besides the ones that you could tailor to your own experience. You would have had spontaneous conversations. You would have begun the spark of a new relationship. The internet has led us to dismiss and disregard the need for third place. We go from work to home, we work from home, we connect on our phones, we read the information that makes us feel good to hear and not be exposed to the untailored discourse. The uncurated talk, the important moments that were found in the third place, it's something we have lost. So instead, we crawl right up on our high horse, perched on our mantle of our own self-righteousness, and judge, and dismiss. We label as toxic, we write off a person from our experience. And when we heed that internet advice to cancel a person from your life without deep and extensive reflection, when we go about labeling a person as toxic without hard investigative analysis, we lose all future parts of relationship. Every potential moment, beautiful moment of growth, of transformation, of rediscovery, and we ignore the meaning behind the holiday we're all here to celebrate. The notion that we have no obligation to others, that we can simply remove them if they don't sit well and they challenge our self-care silo, is antithetical to this tradition. It's actually utter nonsense to believe that the only person we have an obligation to is ourselves. We absolutely have an obligation to others. We just prayed, Ashamnu Bagadnu, words written in the plural, literally translated as we have sinned, because not only are we obligated to care about others, we're actually responsible for their actions in the first place. How can we possibly do that if we remove them for not dwelling in our comfort zones? What's the purpose of tshuva, of repentance, of a promise of growing and being better if we remove people for one or two actions, a part of one's personality? If we believe that canceling a toxic person from your life is the right response, where does that leave you for Yom Kippur? Is it possible to achieve tshuva if we have written off others for their missteps? Is it possible to achieve tshuva if others have written us off for our missteps? Here's the thing. When we say the words of vidui, no one is removed from the opportunity. According to our tradition, there is no action on this earth that an individual can take to be removed from the opportunity of vidui, of acknowledging transgressions, of being released, of forgiven from their sins. Not a single thing removes that right from an individual. We have to give the deepest and realest work. We have to really try and mend broken fences and give people the opportunity to detoxify their way instead of getting them stuck in the moment that they made. The amount of misunderstanding, the lack of background into why a person is acting the way they are, not knowing the full story, will lead us to a very sad reality. Everyone will want somebody else removed for being offended by something they did. You will be removed by someone for something you did, because someone out there is offended by something you did accidentally or on purpose, and that would leave us with absolutely no community left. And that is truly scary. Again, there are true toxic people and relationships worthy of saying goodbye to, but overall, the trend and the popularity of identifying toxic people points far more to haphazard labelings than actually finding toxic people. When we judge others, even though we know that we grow and change, even though we have Kol Nidre, even though we amend on Yom Kippur altogether, we judge others as if we've never grown or changed. We look at a tweet from 10 years ago and hold a person accountable, when from all measurement, that version of the person doesn't exist anymore. They've had 10 years of growth and change. Kol Nidre allows us to not be beholden to any vows we make, to not have to answer to even the promises of our past. And for this reason, Kol Nidre speaks profoundly to this moment in time. In the age of the internet, every impetus posting, every misguided tweet, every regretted utterance, it survives forever. And often no amount of regret is sufficient to undo the stain on a person's reputation. Let Kol Nidre remind us to cancel the missteps rather than the people, accepting genuine regret and embracing the possibility of change and growth. The lessons of Kol Nidre are in some ways more relevant now than they were thousands of years ago when first brought into our liturgy. You know what absolutely blows me right now is that there are communities hearing sermons across the country about how it's okay to protect yourself above all, and giving people permission to cut out the voices that don't make them feel whole, that make them feel uncomfortable. But that takeaway also removes support and protections from the rest of our society, and that is ultimately a far more dangerous thing for each one of us as individuals. And I know that many of you may be sitting here feeling the opposite of everything I have just said. That it is a form of self-preservation to remove people for their ideologies and opinions when they don't sit well with us. And I want to challenge you to try something different as we go through our transformative experience of Yom Kippur this year. So how do we do this? We find the third spaces again. We step back from the over-curated silo and experience new people. We engage with people that are not like us, and we rebuild our ability and patience to listen to others who are unlike us. We need to be very careful to not paint a whole group of people with the same brush. This is hard. This is very, very hard, because we've gotten a long, long way in engaging this way. It's an emotionally difficult task for many of us to reframe and reset how we have come to interact with the world and the fear of how vulnerable it might leave us. That is why we're here together. That is why we spent these days of awe apologizing, but now we join together for this final day of tshuva. Transgressions come in all ranges, all sizes, all intensities, and yet our tradition says that repentance is not hierarchical. God forgives on an even slate, and it is truly only a higher power's prerogative to eternally judge a person. It is not our job to cancel someone beyond return. We have to hold people accountable, and you cannot do that when you cut them off altogether. If we cut them off, we're simply sealing their fate and removing the chance of reformation, and that kind of judgment belongs to the divine alone. That is the very judgment we seek as a community in these next 25 hours, and we have to have enough faith in our tradition to allow that process to happen the way it should. Gamar Chatima Tova, may you be written in the book. We turn to page 1216. As we say our Kaddish tonight, we say that we share the names of those who we loved, who we've lost, who left an imprint on our lives as a way of honoring their memory. I want us to also think about the flaws in the people we loved, and how fortunate we are that we knew enough of their personality, enough of their soul, that we still truly celebrate and honor the memory that they left us. Page 1216, we rise for these words of Kaddish. I invite you to share the names of those aloud at this moment that you're thinking of, those who have inspired you to be a better person, those who would be so proud of you for being here at almost 9 o'clock at night, those who brought you to connect you to tradition, those who you simply still feel their love each day, even though they've passed. I ask you to share their names aloud at this time. Mixing all of their names together, I promise you the divine can hear each and every one.
Mary Rappaport.
We read together, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei amaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitcherman v'yitnaseh, V'yitchadar, v'yitchalel, v'yitchalal, shemei dekudsha brechu, le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchatav, v'shiratav, tushbachatav, v'nechematav, da'amiram be'amav, v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, B'imru, amen. You may be seated. It says here I have announcements. I also see many of our wonderful board members in this space. You've heard a lot of my voice. Would any of the board members like to come down and share some of these announcements with our group? No pressure. I didn't use any of your names yet, but I know where all of you are sitting. That's the way this room is designed. All right.
That's great. Carol.
It's nice to have this off. I'm so happy to see all of you here and to be together. It really means the world to me. I want to let you know that there's a food drive. Thank you to those of you who have already given to the annual KI food drive. KI is the single largest donor to the West Side Food Bank each year since the food drive began. Every $25 donation provides 125 pounds of food. Compared to last year's 460,000 pounds of food, we're less than halfway there. Donations can be made at rki.org/food drive. The service tomorrow, Wednesday, October 5th, please join us for Yom Kippur. The building opens at 9 a.m. Doors open at 9:45. Both services, sanctuary and social hall, begin at 10 a.m. The sanctuary service can also be viewed at ourki.org live cam. Yom Kippur services throughout the day at KI. 1 p.m., please join Rabbi Rubin for congregational study in the sanctuary and on Zoom.
At 2 p.m., there's a little change there.
Okay, thank you.
The private reflection will be in this space. We'll have music. We'll have a chance for you to be in your sanctuary, to be here, to take in this space, to be doing your own set of thoughts and meditations.
At 4 p.m., guest speaker Joe Goldman of HIAS, the Jewish Agency for Refugees and Asylum Seekers, in person and at Barnum, live streamed in the KI Social Hall. Mincha begins at 4:30, Yisker at 5 p.m., and Naila at 5:30. For all High Holiday information, please visit rki.org/HHD. Shana Tova.
We will see all of you tomorrow.